Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to go over a miracle that was sent in by email from Andrea Hansen. She is actually the girl that started this whole thing of sending in miracle stories, things that of course are appropriate to send in that aren't too spiritual in nature. Um, and this, if you don't know, she got this idea from this. President Nelson's talk, October 2022, General Conference, Overcome the World and Find Rest, where he made this peculiar statement where he says, "But my dear brothers and sisters, so many wonderful things are ahead. In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns with power and great glory, he will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful." And so she had this idea that it'd be neat to see if anybody out there feels like they're experiencing these miracles. So I put out the call, and it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. It's just I've been kind of in a funk lately with the channel, but I wanted to go ahead and do this, especially since tomorrow is Sunday. Maybe this will be a good activity for you to kind of listen to this miracle story. Before we launch into that, this is the latest update on the Book of Mormon Sharing Challenge, also known as hashtag Flood the Earth. So we got one more person that joined since the last video that I did a few hours ago. So we're at 502 people that have joined the challenge. Continue to make that number go up. Everyone, please join if you haven't done it already. And let's see if we can make more of a difference in the world and help gather scattered Israel. A total of 5,259 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared. And then 37 reports of people meeting with the missionaries. This number went up today by 1. And then 10 total baptisms. And I'm going to be honest with you. Oh ye of little faith. When I started this challenge, I didn't expect to really see any baptisms. I know, but see, I'm willing to test things out and see if I'm wrong instead of like guessing or trying to assume what's going to happen. Just do it and see what happens. And so it's since December until now, it's up to 10, unless there's more that have been unreported. And who the heck knows how far this can go? So I'm kind of under obligation at this point to do this until I die or until YouTube goes away or something. But yeah, so it's really cool. All right, so let's get to her story. She actually told me this on the phone because I wanted to talk to her on the phone about this idea, but she sent in the full version to share on the channel. So here we go. She says, "Yep, I'm going to try to attach it to this email. Also look for another email following it with pictures." Just referring to a previous email, it didn't come through quite. She sent the pictures. So if you need a visualization, so basically this is Andrea in her immediate and extended family. So this is her right here, okay? And this is her dad. And he looks a lot like a guy in my ward, by the way. Um, Here's the dad again. And I think that's his brother. She put like a little, my dad and uncle strolling through the cemetery. Okay, so this is dad and uncle right here with the white beard. Grandkids, I'm not going to show that full picture just because YouTube's kind of weird about that. And then you have the siblings. You have Andrea right here, younger sister, older sister, brother. And then the whole family with dad right here in the middle. And then there's uncle right there. And then another family picture right here. Okay. And she said that her aunt from Canada, I don't want to scroll up too high because I don't want to show her email address. More of a full group, including my dad in the very center, sitting in. Okay, my sibling. Oh, where is it? I could have sworn somewhere it said something about her aunt. Oh, here we go. Image 0. About 2/3 of the group. I'm on the far left, followed by my aunt and uncle from Canada. Okay, so these are all the people that are in this story that we're about to read. Okay. And I couldn't blow these pictures up, by the way. They're just low resolution pictures, which is fine. It's the best that we can do. Okay. So in order to understand the impact of my story fully and the significance of the said events, I have to take you on a little journey through the last few years of mine and my family's lives. My parents were born and grew up in Washington State, where they married and raised all four of us kids. Okay, so that's the four in the picture with the one brother, and then the other ones are daughters or sisters. My brother is the oldest. Then my sister came along 3.5 years later. Then me 3.5 years later. Oh, what do you know? There's the two 3.5 year periods. We're talking about the 7 years of tribulation right there. Just kidding. And when my sister, and then my sister 6 years later, she was a bit of a surprise. All of us grew up in Western Washington in the same house where my parents lived for more than 17 years. Ooh, 17. There's a lot of things going on in this video with numbers. Then, when right before my junior year started, my dad's job transferred him and we moved to Eastern Washington. That was back in 1996. Just for a visual, I know everyone knows where Washington is, most likely. I do have some foreign viewers, so I don't know how familiar they are actually. So here's the United States, the continental United States, the lower 48 states, and up in the northwestern most extreme part of the country, well, except for Alaska all the way up here, you have Washington State. Not to be confused with Washington, D.C., which is on the complete other side of the country. So she's talking about how here's Western Washington. This is the more populated side with Seattle, Tacoma, this whole metro area over here. And then the eastern side, I think the biggest city on that side is Spokane. And that's actually near where my mother-in-law lives. She just lives across the border in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area. This is a beautiful part of the country, by the way. If you ever get a chance to go up there, it's gorgeous. Okay, so anyway, so that's Washington. Okay, all right. So, um, okay. Then, when right before my junior year started, my dad's job transferred him and we moved to Eastern Washington. That was back in 1996. My brother got married and moved away that same year. Then, my sister married the following year in 2000. My husband and I got married in 2006. My little sister was married. All of us except my brother lived in the Tri-Cities close to my parents. They were a big part of our kids' lives, which was great. So did you guys move? Let's see, Tri-Cities, Washington. I'm assuming that's back in the western part of the state, in the Seattle area. Let's see. So here's Washington. So it's in this like southeastern part of, so like this right here. I guess these are that's the Tri-City area. The Tri-Cities are three closely linked cities: Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland. Okay, there's Pasco, Kennewick, and then Richland right there. Okay, so down here, pretty close to the Oregon border. All right. Sorry, I have to do it. I have to do it. It's for my sake. Okay, they were a big part of our kids' lives, which was great. Fast forward to 2018. Okay, now President Nelson is president of the church. My parents decided, sort of out of the blue, to move to South Carolina, where my brother lived with his family. They had been to visit them many times and loved the warm weather and getting to know their other grandkids. Again, if you're not familiar with the geography of the United States, Washington is way in the heck over here, and South Carolina is almost, it's almost as far away as you can get, except for maybe Georgia, Florida, maybe Alabama. I'm not exactly sure. It's probably further away than Alabama. Anyway, so it's like all the way on the other side of the country, on the other coast, the East Coast. All right. So that's where her parents moved to be closer to her brother, which was also there. Okay. And this plays into the story, by the way. I'll have you know. So don't worry, it's not for nothing. Now, my brother and his wife had the youngest kids, even though my brother is the oldest sibling. They had tried for 15 years with no luck. Now they are the parents of four beautiful children. My mom was tired of missing out on important events in their lives, and so they decided it would be best to move close to them. It was an extremely hard decision on the rest of us, as we knew how much we would miss them, but they had been there for the majority of the older grandkids' blessings and baptisms. In 2020, it was supposed to be my parents' 50th anniversary, and all of us were supposed to meet in South Carolina on the coast to celebrate. Unfortunately, the pandemic was in full swing at this point, and everyone canceled their trip. Interestingly, I felt prompted to take my kids still to see my mom and dad and their cousins. It would mean traveling by myself with my kids, as my husband had to work. I'm now so grateful for that trip we took, as it was the last time we got to spend with my mom. Okay, fast forward to July 2021. And Andrea, I'm sorry for your loss. Fast forward to July 2021. My dad's health was horrible, as he was in and out of the hospital many times that year. My mom was very overwhelmed at having to take care of him. In all the going back and forth from the hospitals and rehab facilities, she was running herself ragged trying to keep up. We figured out that in January of 2021, my dad had two strokes while in the care of the hospital. This meant a lot of rehabilitation for him over the next 6 months. Both my sisters took turns flying there to help my mom with the load. I could not that year, as I had my own eventful year with 4 surgeries between my spouse and me. Oh, geez. Um, just a quick thing about me. I've only ever had one surgery. I had my appendix out, but that's it. And I hope I don't have any more in the future. But geez, 4 in 1 year between the two of you. I'm not counting like having my wisdom teeth out. I don't really count that as surgery. Okay, but we had but we had planned to go see them in August to commemorate their anniversary. But at that time, my dad was in the hospital again with a major UTI and his body turning septic. What's a UTI? UTI medical abbreviation. What is that? Urinary tract infection. And then what? Uh, Septic. I know I have a septic tank. I know what that is. I kind of feel a little bit silly not knowing what this means. Infected with microorganisms, especially harmful bacteria. Yeah, because that's how a septic tank works. It has bacteria in there that essentially uh, it breaks down the solid matter. So that anyway, let's not get into septic tanks. Okay, so he was having he was having that issue, and he was septic, so he had like this had infected with microorganisms, especially harmful bacteria. Okay, something along those lines. My mom had just started fighting COVID and was taken to the hospital the day before my family planned to fly there. I tried to go I tried to go and see her while there, but the rules were strict and no one was allowed. So I chatted with my mom every day via Google Duo, so I could see how she was. My mom and dad hadn't seen each other in 2 weeks at this point because of her illness. The day my mom went into the hospital, my dad was released from the hospital to a rehab facility, as he had just received a pacemaker. I was able to visit him immediately and got my mom on a video call so he could see her. It was a beautiful moment, and unfortunately, their last conversation. That's that's really sad. At least they were able to have that conversation. I guess we should look at it that way. I was lucky enough to take a screenshot of them, as I teased that they had matching outfits on the same hospital gowns. What I didn't know was that my mom would pass away just a few short days later. My dad never got to say goodbye, but all of us kids did get to go and say goodbye before they took her off the machines. The pneumonia was too hard on her body, and she died of heart failure. She was only 69. Oh my gosh. Okay, everyone, take care of your health, especially when you get older. Um, Here, my dad had suffered 2 strokes, a quadruple bypass surgery, two hip re- 2 hip replacements, and a pacemaker, all in the few years they had moved there. And my mom was the one to go first. Blows our minds. None of us were prepared for that. That is just, man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for you and yours. My dad suffers from vascular dementia due to his strokes, and after we told him of my mom passing, it was too unsafe for them to allow my dad access to her. He basically checked out mentally. We all prayed for him to be able to answer the basic questions for us as far as mom's wishes and his wishes, and the Lord heard our prayers. We had a 30-minute window where we were able to talk to my dad. He was mostly lucid and told us what his and my mom's wishes were, which was to be buried back in Western Washington State in Marysville, where they and us grandkids grew up. So let's go back to the map. Let's see where Marysville is. And I think I remember this actually from our conversation on the phone. Marysville, Washington. Because I think that's like in the Seattle area, north. Yeah. Yep. It's a little bit north of Seattle. Looks like it's probably, well, I'm not sure if you would consider it a suburb. It's a little bit disconnected right here, but I don't know. Maybe it's a suburb. Okay, so Marysville, right here, just north of Seattle. Okay, so back to here. My dad was in no shape to fly there to attend the funeral. So all the planning and logistics were left up to us kids to figure out. My mom has only one sibling, a brother who lives in Canada with his wife and 2 daughters, which we were all very close to growing up. But my uncle was not able to cross the border at that time during the pandemic, as Canada was very strict. So we had permission to have a Zoom funeral, so others that couldn't be there could attend. It was a very small amount that were able to make it, and mostly my dad's family. My mom's funeral was held on September of 2021, and by November, it was easy to see that my dad was slipping into terrible mental health. The facility he was at for the original rehab was a long-term care facility as well. With my mother passing and no one there to care for my dad, he remained in the care of the facility. While I would like while I would like to not say anything horrible about the place, they just weren't attentive to my dad's needs, and he was slowly slipping into oblivion. My siblings and I had a group call and decided we needed to move dad back to Washington, where everything was familiar and he had friends and family close by. We put our plan into action and told my dad that he had to do everything he could to get well enough to make a flight across the country to return home. Well, he did his part, and by the end of January 2022, my sister and I were making plans to bring him home. That was a miracle in itself, as he hadn't had the strength to walk a step, let alone get out of bed after losing his wife. Okay, so here's where the miracles this is where they start. Okay, miracles. Okay, the point of this video. And then on top of all that, the month before we planned to bring him home, he contracted COVID himself, and the doctor at the facility told him he expected he would die from it. Oh my gosh. But somehow, through prayers and fasting, he pulled out of it and was ready when we came to get him a few short weeks later. We traveled a 15-hour day with him. Okay, we traveled a 15-hour day with him and brought him back to my house in eastern Washington. I had set up I had set up an assisted living facility just 10 minutes from my house where my dad would be taken care of. I personally checked out multiple facilities but felt this was the best one for him. This is where he lives today and loves it. They take such good care of him. Every week, my dad attends church with our family, holds a calling, and just received his renewed temple recommend. He was eager to go see where my mom was laid to rest, but we knew with it being a 4-hour drive, it would be another hurdle to get him there. But we had been praying about the timing of when it should happen, and all we knew was it needed to happen before nasty winter weather set in. Yeah, yeah, guys, because remember, uh, this is where she was buried up here in Marysville, but the family still lives in this tri-state area. So that's a long. Let's see. So Marysville to, let's say, Kennewick directions. Kennewick, Washington. Yeah, driving, that's 3 hours and 50 minutes. And I'll tell you something, I don't know. Well, I think I do know when I broke. I used to always love to drive until I got out of the Army, because we had to do a bunch of drives between Fort Hood, which is in the center of the state of Texas, to Phoenix, because like we were going back, we were looking for a place to live after we got out of the Army. So we had to do it a couple times. Plus, when my dad passed away in 2015, when I was in the middle of my Army service, we did a drive from Fort Hood all the way up to Salt Lake. So by the time I was done with the Army, I was just like done with driving. And now that we're here in Kansas, I'm wanting to go up to Kansas City more, but it's just like, is this something that happens to you guys? Like maybe those of you that are a little bit up there in age, like does it get harder to travel or to want to travel? Because I feel like that part of me is just dead. I really don't want to go anywhere further than just like maybe an hour to an hour and a half from where we live. But so when she's talking about a 4-hour drive, I just that sounds terrible to me. Hopefully in the millennium that'll be fixed. Hopefully it's true that we'll move at the speed of thought, although I have my doubts about that. But okay, so they're facing a 4-hour trip in winter time. So snow, bad driving, bad driving conditions. Yikes. Okay. But we knew with it being a 4-hour drive, it would be another hurdle to get him there. But we had been praying about the timing of when it should happen, and uh, all we knew was it needed to happen before nasty winter weather set in. Thank heavens we did an Indian summer this year, which allowed us to push out the date a little further. In the meantime, my dad was hard at working. Okay, in case again, I have other people. There's people that speak other languages. English is not their um, primary language. That just means like a long summer. Okay, so she says, thank heavens we had a longer summer this year. Okay. In the meantime, my dad was hard at work, going to therapy twice a week to get his strength and stamina up. His birthday was coming up October 24th, and my husband and I thought it would be a good birthday present to take him. I had been in touch with my aunt and uncle in Canada, and they called to let me know the border had finally opened and they were coming to visit. We decided to meet the weekend of the 28th to the 30th. The next day, my younger sister, that now lives in Utah, called to say they wanted to surprise my dad for his birthday and bring their family to see him. I told her if they wanted to push it to the next weekend, we could meet them. We could meet in Marysville, where they could see Bill and Liz and their girls too. They were ecstatic. I couldn't believe our luck. Then I reached out to my sister who lives in the other part of Washington to see if she could accommodate family and maybe a luncheon after the gathering at the cemetery. She was more than happy to help. At this point, I really wanted to tell my brother in South Carolina uh, what we were planning, so they wouldn't feel left out, but figured it would be way too expensive for them to come. Uh, I di- let's see. I didn't get my hopes up, but I reached out in text and let them know. They did some research as I did. They did okay. They did some research as did I, and found that tickets were upwards of $1,500 each. Oh my gosh. Way too much. So as much as it would have been wonderful to have them join us, That would have been too expensive. But about a week later, I had a prompting to text my sister-in-law and let her know how much we wished they could be there. I felt so guilty asking again, but I knew it was a prompting from the Spirit. But even so, I ended the text with, "I totally understand if you can't. Just wanted to let you know how much you'll be missed." She didn't really respond, except with a frowny face, and she said she wished they could too. But then later that night, I got a call from them telling me they went online to look for tickets again after I sent my text and somehow found some for $400 each. That is quite the difference. I mean that is a $1,100 difference. That is insane. A week and a half before the trip, they also asked us to keep it a secret from everyone. So we set up the luncheon at my sister's house to happen after leaving the cemetery Saturday afternoon. I booked a hotel for my family since my dad couldn't do stairs well, and booked rooms right across from us for my brother's family and my other sister's family. We all arrived Friday night and had just a quick hello to everyone, full of hugs, before we all need before all needing to crash, as it had been a long day for all of us. Next morning was supposed to be drizzly and gloomy, and when we woke, it was thick with fog. But by the time we left to go to the cemetery, the fog had all burned off, and it was a beautiful sunny day. There were 31 of us total at the cemetery, and we hadn't really planned to say anything. We just wanted to be there among each other, the way it should have been for the funeral. The lovely thing was, it had been a year, and we could laugh and be joyful and not so full of sorrow. It was so healing for so many of us. Not only my dad, where he could finally have some closure, but also my mom's brother and his wife and kids. Finally, finally being with loved ones to mourn the loss of his dear sister, who was the younger one and not supposed to go first, according to him. But also, my brother's wife of 26 years had never had the opportunity to meet our aunt and uncle from Canada. It was so joyful for them and full of happy tears. Part of what made things extra special, if it wasn't already enough, was the fact that my mom was a pioneer in her family. She joined the church after marrying my dad, but remained the only member in her whole family the rest of her earthly life. Her brother had been skeptical of the gospel ever since I can remember, as he was a scientist and needs to prove everything. The years have truly softened him. He came over to me at the cemetery to thank me for pulling off such an incredible feat. I told him I couldn't take credit for it. It was my mom and the Lord. This is what she wanted to have happen, and somehow she magically made it happen, and that she was there enjoying every minute of it watching us. He mentioned that it was true. Sorry, he mentioned that it was true and that he could feel how happy my mom was around us. That was incredible to hear coming from someone was much of a who was much of an agnostic for most of his life. Another wonderful thing that transpired through all this was a lot of genealogy. I'd been I'd been the one to take possession of my mom and dad's family records when we cleaned out their house. There were 4 Rubbermaid boxes I took on the plane with me as I went home after helping my siblings clean out my parents' home to get ready to sell it. Before the reunion, I felt the need and urgency to separate out my mom's records and organize them in such a way that I could one day share them with my uncle, as most of the records rightly belonged to him. My father died. Sorry, what? Oh, their father died. Uh, okay, so the grandpa. Their father died when my mom was 16 and my uncle was 22. Their mom had put all of their father's records away nicely, but never again talked about it with them. Bill, my mom's brother, didn't even know they existed. Letters his father had written, photos he'd never seen of his father and mother on their honeymoon, and many more wonderful things. I had I had originally gone through and separated out what I thought belonged to my uncle, and then put everything else in a container for him to look at and enjoy with me while there. But when I started showing him the photos and items, he was so overwhelmed with emotion. The Spirit told me in that moment I needed to give him the whole box. I was really scared too because I wanted to preserve all that genealogy and I was so afraid of never seeing it again. But as I did what the Spirit told me to do, another miracle happened. My cousin, his daughter, um, is one of the head archivists, or yeah, archivists in the Vancouver, British Columbia Museum of History. She asked me if I would allow her the privilege. She would. Okay. She asked me if I would allow her the privilege. Uh, she would properly archive the items to last forever and make copies for all the family to have. Holy smokes! I was floored and overjoyed. Yeah. What are the chances of that? The Spirit knew. Okay, the trip ended the following day, Sunday, as we all returned to our homes. It was an incredible weekend I won't soon forget and probably never have a chance in this life again. So many, many tender mercies of the Lord. It was in the recording of this special event that I was reminded of President Nelson's talk from the last conference. The Spirit bore witness to me that this event was one of the many privileges, the quote, privileges, blessings, and miracles President Nelson told us would happen. I'm so grateful I got to be a part of it, as did my children. And that is it. And that is an incredible thing. And I would definitely agree that this would fit into what President Nelson was talking about. I've talked about on the channel how I think a lot of things right now are happening with families. We've read from oh geez, I can't remember if it's Joel. I think it is Joel, where it talks about the last days and the Valley of Decision called Jehoshaphat. Let me just double check it here. Job, Joel, third chapter. All nations will be at war. Multitudes will stand in the valley of decision as as the second coming draws near. And the name for that is Jehoshaphat. Let's see. I want to see if I can just find it really quick. Well, I'll just read this right here, verse 14. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. You could say there's probably a literal aspect to this, very possibly, but I think there's definitely a spiritual aspect to this where right now is a time of people needing to decide what they're going to do. The reason why is because once the second coming, once the part of the second coming comes where the earth is cleansed with fire, if you're living a celestial lifestyle, you will not be moving on into the millennium. You'll be going to the spirit world. You can still repent there, but your resurrection is not going to be until the end of the millennium. We've researched that in Doctrines of Salvation, Joseph Fielding Smith, and I think a couple other places. But right now, I think the Lord. Okay, some people have like misinterpreted what I was saying about families separating, because I think there's a couple things going on. Frankly, I think that in some cases families are separating. They're separating because they're making their decision, right? And lifestyles and other things are bringing some families apart. But in other cases where there's potential, like for example with her uncle, maybe her cousins, um, there might actually be something that comes out of this experience. Why they were all able to go to Marysville and be there at the same time, right? Um, so in that case, I mean, only time will tell. But maybe in this case, a family was brought together because there was potential that you know her uncle and his family will progress. Maybe they'll accept the gospel later on. Maybe this is a preparation for them for before or even in the millennium itself, right? Whereas in other cases, and I'm not judging, but I feel like I've observed in other cases, and it's not just me. I've had other people say this as well in the comments, and then I've talked to some people um, on the phone, just people I know. In other cases, families are being pulled apart as they're making decisions. The righteous are wanting to be more righteous. They're wanting to stick to righteousness. Those that are living a wicked lifestyle, they're going more and more that direction, and it's harder to be around each other. And in some cases, like I think might be the case with me and my family. Now, this is personal, and this is how I feel. I'm entitled to that. I think maybe the Lord kind of brought me and Jenica out from that and brought us to geographically to um, a place kind of far away from them. Um, Not passing judgment, that's up to the Lord, but that's just something that I kind of feel. And I feel like it's a tender mercy because if any of them go, and I'm not sure that they are, but if any of them do not go on into the millennium, which I feel like there's a chance of that, it could help soften that blow. If there's already been X number of years before that happens, that we've already kind of, finalize things kind of in our mind. Not that we're trying to, push them away. If we get a chance, we're going to go visit them and stuff. It comes down to money and, uh, you know, when the kids are off school and stuff like that. So we're not like actively trying to push people away. I think that's something that people thought I was saying, but I wasn't. But anyway, hopefully you understand what I'm saying. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and close it on that. So thank you, Andrea. It's an amazing story. It certainly was a whole collection of miracles that took place, a whole series of miracles, and I have no doubt that it has everything to do with what President Nelson said, October 2022. All right. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.